The day my divorce hearing began, my husband looked straight at the judge and smiled. Then he pointed at me and said, "She's lying. She always exaggerates to get sympathy." His mother nodded proudly beside him. Even the judge looked unconvinced. For one terrifying moment, I thought I was about to lose everything. Then my vision blurred. My knees buckled beneath me. Before anyone could react, a man in a military uniform stood up from the back of the courtroom and shouted, "Your Honor, I'm a military physician, and she's in medical distress." What happened next changed every life in that courtroom forever. My name is Captain Olivia Parker. I'm 34 years old, and for 12 years I proudly served as a logistics officer in the United States Army. My career taught me to stay calm under pressure, trust facts over emotions, and never leave anyone behind. I never imagined the hardest battle of my life wouldn't happen overseas. It would happen inside a family courtroom, and the man standing against me wouldn't be a stranger. He would be my own husband. His name was Ethan Parker. When we met 8 years earlier, he admired my discipline. He often joked that I planned everything with military precision. He loved hearing stories about humanitarian missions, long deployments, and the friendships I built while serving. Back then, he told everyone he was proud of me. Somewhere along the way, that pride slowly turned into resentment. After I left active duty, because of a service-related medical condition, life became different. Most days I looked perfectly healthy. I still exercised. I still worked as a civilian operations consultant. I still smiled. But every few weeks, severe stress could trigger episodes of dizziness, blurred vision, and sudden weakness. My doctors had explained everything clearly. The condition was manageable with medication, regular monitoring, and avoiding prolonged emotional stress whenever possible. Ethan attended those appointments. He heard every explanation. At least, I believed he had listened. The bigger problem wasn't Ethan at first. It was his mother, Linda. From the beginning, she never approved of me. According to her, military service had made me too independent. She constantly hinted that Ethan deserved someone less complicated. Whenever my health required me to rest for a day or cancel plans, she'd quietly whisper, "She's looking for attention." At first, Ethan defended me. Then he started staying silent. Eventually, he started agreeing with her. Every disagreement somehow became connected to my health. "If you weren't so dramatic, if you weren't always exhausted, if you weren't imagining problems," those sentences became painfully familiar. I stopped arguing. I kept every medical record, every diagnosis, every treatment plan, not because I expected a divorce, because military training teaches you to document everything. 6 years after our wedding, our marriage quietly fell apart. There wasn't one explosive fight, just hundreds of small disappointments that slowly erased trust. When Ethan finally filed for divorce, I didn't fight the decision. Some relationships can't survive when respect disappears. The only thing I wanted was a fair ending. Nothing more, nothing less. The final hearing arrived on a cold January morning. Snow covered the courthouse steps as I walked inside carrying a small folder containing every document my attorney had asked me to bring. Medical records, financial records, military service documents, everything organized in perfect order. Old habits never disappear. When I entered the courtroom, Ethan was already there. Dark navy suit, perfectly styled hair, confident smile. His mother sat directly behind him, wearing an expression that almost looked victorious. She noticed me first, then leaned toward Ethan and whispered something. He smiled without looking at me. That smile hurt more than I expected. Not because I still loved him, because I suddenly realized he truly believed he'd already won. My attorney, Jennifer Lawson, quietly placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Just answer honestly." "I will. The facts are on your side." I nodded. The judge entered. Everyone stood. After several preliminary matters, Ethan's attorney began presenting his arguments. At first, everything sounded routine. Property, finances, retirement accounts. Then, the conversation shifted. "My client," his attorney began, "has experienced years of emotional manipulation." I frowned. He continued, Mrs. Parker frequently exaggerated health concerns in order to control household decisions and gain sympathy. My stomach tightened. Jennifer immediately objected. Your Honor, there is extensive medical documentation. The judge calmly raised a hand. I'll hear both sides. Ethan was called to testify. He walked confidently to the witness stand, placed one hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, then looked directly at me. His voice remained calm, almost rehearsed. Olivia has always known how to make herself the victim. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He continued. Every time we argued, suddenly she wasn't feeling well. His mother nodded dramatically behind him. There were always doctors. Always another condition. But, honestly, he shrugged. I think she convinced herself she was sick. A quiet murmur spread across the courtroom. Jennifer immediately stood. Objection. The judge allowed Ethan to finish. Then Ethan looked directly toward the bench. I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying she lies. She exaggerates. She always has. The words landed harder than I expected. Not because strangers believed them, because the man speaking had once held my hand inside military hospitals. He'd once promised to stand beside me. Now he was using my medical history against me. Jennifer called my name. I slowly walked to the witness stand. After taking the oath, I answered every question carefully. I explained my military service, my diagnosis, the medical specialists who had treated me, the accommodations recommended by my physicians. Every answer remained calm. Every answer matched the documents. Then Jennifer asked one final question. Captain Parker, have you ever intentionally fabricated or exaggerated your medical condition? I looked directly at the judge. No. Before Jennifer could continue, Ethan suddenly interrupted. That's exactly what she always says. Jennifer objected again. The judge immediately instructed him to remain silent. But the damage had already been done. The room felt strangely smaller, hotter. The voices around me became distant. I reached for the edge of the witness stand. The courtroom lights suddenly seemed far too bright. My heartbeat became loud inside my ears. Jennifer's face blurred. The judge said something. I couldn't understand the words. A wave of dizziness rushed through my body. I tried to steady myself. Instead, my knees gave way beneath me. The last thing I heard before everything faded was Linda's voice. See, she's pretending again. Then, from somewhere behind the courtroom benches, a calm, commanding voice cut through the silence. Your Honor, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Michael Harris, United States Army Medical Corps. And in less than 30 seconds, everything inside that courtroom changed. The courtroom fell completely silent. Before anyone else could react, the man who had spoken hurried toward me. He wore a dark Army service uniform with the silver oak leaves of a lieutenant colonel on his shoulders. His movements were calm, confident, professional. He knelt beside me without hesitation. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Michael Harris, he said to the judge. I'm a physician with the United States Army Medical Corps. He gently checked my pulse. Captain Parker? I heard his voice through the haze. Olivia, can you hear me? I managed a slight nod. Good. His tone never changed. Stay still. Your breathing is elevated. He looked toward the courtroom deputy. Please call emergency medical services as a precaution. This appears to be a stress-induced episode related to a documented medical condition. No panic. No drama. Just calm medical instructions. Within seconds, someone brought a chair while another person placed a small cushion beneath my head. Dr. Harris continued monitoring my breathing. You'll be all right, he said quietly. Just focus on slow breaths. Across the room, I noticed Ethan standing frozen beside the witness stand. His confident expression had disappeared. Linda looked equally shocked. For the first time all morning, neither of them had anything to say. A few minutes later, paramedics entered the courtroom. They checked my blood pressure, oxygen level, and heart rate. After reviewing my medical bracelet and speaking briefly with Dr. Harris, one of the paramedics turned toward the judge. Your Honor, she's stable. We believe the episode was triggered by severe emotional stress. We recommend evaluation after today's proceedings but she is alert and able to continue if she chooses. The judge looked directly at me. Mrs. Parker, would you like additional time? I slowly sat upright. No, Your Honor. I'd like to finish. The judge nodded respectfully. Dr. Harris stood. With the court's permission, I believe I can provide relevant factual testimony. The judge agreed. After taking the oath, Dr. Harris introduced himself. My name is Michael Harris. I've served as a military physician for 24 years. I supervised portions of Captain Olivia Parker's treatment during her final years of active military service. He opened a neatly organized folder. I also reviewed her ongoing medical evaluations after retirement. The courtroom became perfectly still. Dr. Harris continued. Captain Parker developed a documented neurological condition following years of military service. It is recognized by military physicians. It is supported by diagnostic testing. It is managed through medication, lifestyle adjustments, and stress reduction. He looked briefly toward me before continuing. One of the known triggers is prolonged emotional stress. What occurred in this courtroom today is entirely consistent with her documented medical history. Ethan's attorney slowly stood. Doctor, are you saying today's episode could not have been intentional? Dr. Harris answered immediately. I'm saying there is absolutely no medical evidence suggesting fabrication. He paused. In fact, the opposite is true. He lifted another document. Captain Parker repeatedly postponed treatment during active service because she insisted on completing operational responsibilities before focusing on herself. Several people in the courtroom exchanged surprised looks. Dr. Harris smiled slightly. I spent years telling her to slow down. She rarely listened. A quiet laugh spread through the courtroom. Even the judge smiled briefly. Then Dr. Harris grew serious again. One of the most difficult things about invisible medical conditions is that people often mistake appearance for health. He looked directly toward Ethan. Someone may appear perfectly fine 99% of the time. That does not erase the 1% when their body refuses to cooperate. Those words hung heavily in the room. Jennifer carefully placed several medical files onto the evidence table. Your Honor, she said, these records were previously disclosed during discovery. The judge reviewed the documents. Every page carried military medical seals. Every diagnosis matched Dr. Harris's testimony. Every recommendation confirmed the same condition. Nothing had been hidden. Nothing exaggerated. Everything had been documented years before the divorce. The judge slowly removed his reading glasses. Then he turned toward Ethan. Mr. Parker. Ethan straightened immediately. Were you aware that these medical records existed? Yes. Were you present during at least some of these medical consultations? Ethan hesitated. I was. The judge remained silent. Finally, Ethan answered more quietly. Yes, Your Honor. Another long pause filled the courtroom. The judge spoke again. Then help me understand something. If you knew licensed military physicians diagnosed this condition, if you attended appointments, and if these records were disclosed before today's hearing, on what basis did you repeatedly describe your wife's condition as fabricated? Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked toward his attorney, then toward his mother. Linda lowered her eyes to the floor. No one came to his rescue. For nearly 10 seconds, the courtroom remained completely silent. His silence echoed louder than any accusation he had made all morning. At that moment, everyone in the courtroom realized something profound. This hearing was no longer about proving whether I had been honest. That question had already been answered. Now, the only remaining question was why my husband had chosen to ignore the truth he had known all along. The silence inside the courtroom seemed endless. Ethan stood at the witness stand staring at the floor, while the judge waited patiently for an answer. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. I knew she had medical records. The judge nodded. But you still described her condition as fabricated. Ethan swallowed. I never saw the worst episodes myself. He glanced toward me before lowering his eyes again. Most of the time, she looked completely healthy. His voice grew quieter. I convinced myself she was exaggerating. The judge leaned forward. What led you to that conclusion? Ethan hesitated. Then, for the first time that morning, he answered honestly. My mother always believed Olivia used her health to avoid difficult situations. Linda immediately looked up. Ethan. He gently raised a hand. No, Mom. His voice remained calm. This is my responsibility. He looked directly at the judge. I stopped trusting my own experiences. I listened to opinions instead of facts. I let frustration become suspicion. And, eventually, I believed something that wasn't true. The courtroom remained silent. No one interrupted him. The judge folded his hands. Mr. Parker, disagreements happen in every marriage. But making unsupported claims about another person's documented medical condition is extremely serious. He paused before continuing. When those claims are made under oath, they carry even greater weight. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand. The judge turned toward me. Captain Parker. Throughout today's proceedings, despite repeated personal accusations, you remained respectful. You relied on documentation rather than emotion. That speaks well of your credibility. I simply nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. After reviewing the financial records, property agreements, and the remaining legal matters, the judge announced his decision. The divorce settlement would proceed according to the evidence already presented. The division of assets remained fair. Neither party received an unfair advantage. More importantly, the court officially recognized that my documented medical condition had been repeatedly supported by credible medical evidence. The allegations that I had fabricated or exaggerated my illness were given no legal weight. The judge looked at both of us one final time. I sincerely hope both of you move forward with greater wisdom than you brought into this courtroom today. With one strike of the gavel, our marriage officially ended. Outside the courtroom, reporters weren't waiting. There were no dramatic crowds. Just a quiet hallway filled with families facing their own difficult moments. I gathered my folder of documents and thanked Jennifer for everything she had done. You handled yourself beautifully, she said. I had good evidence. She smiled. And remarkable self-control. As Jennifer walked toward the elevators, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Ethan stood a few feet away. For the first time in years, he looked uncertain. Not defeated. Not angry. Simply exhausted. Olivia. I waited quietly. I'm sorry. The words came slowly. I know those two words can't fix anything. They can't. I know. He took a deep breath. When we first got married, I admired how strong you were. I told everyone how proud I was of your service. His voice cracked slightly. Then somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing your strength. I started seeing only the inconveniences. He shook his head. I let resentment replace gratitude. I let someone else's opinions become louder than your truth. I listened without interrupting. I'm ashamed of what I said today. You should be. He nodded. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I just needed you to hear me admit that I was wrong. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I answered. I appreciate the apology. He looked hopeful for a brief second. Then I continued. But trust doesn't disappear because of one mistake. It disappears because the same choice is repeated over and over. His shoulders dropped. I know. I believed you when no one else questioned you. I expected the same. I failed you. Yes. He looked down. I'm sorry. This time, I believed he meant it. But believing his apology didn't mean I could rebuild what had already been broken. Sometimes sincerity arrives after the damage is irreversible. We wished each other well. Then we walked in opposite directions. Before leaving the courthouse, I stopped beside Dr. Michael Harris. He was speaking with one of the paramedics. When he noticed me, he smiled warmly. Feeling better? Much. I don't know how to thank you. He shook his head. You don't owe me thanks. You stood up for me. No. He smiled again. I stood up for the truth. He adjusted the folder beneath his arm. Military medicine teaches us something very important. Documentation matters. But character matters even more. He looked at me with the same calm confidence I'd remembered from years earlier. You earned respect long before today. The courtroom simply had the opportunity to see it. Those words stayed with me long after we shook hands. A year has passed since that hearing. Life looks very different now. I accepted a leadership role helping veterans transition into civilian careers. Every week I meet men and women who quietly carry invisible injuries while trying to build new lives. Whenever someone tells me, "No one believes what I'm going through," I understand exactly how they feel. And I remind them of something I've learned myself. You don't have to prove your worth by arguing with people determined to misunderstand you. Live honestly. Keep your integrity. Let the truth speak through your actions. Eventually, it always does. Sometimes people ask whether the military doctor changed my life that day. I always smile. No. He reminded everyone else of the truth. The person who truly changed my life was me. Because the day my husband called me a liar in court, I believed I was about to lose everything. Instead, I walked out with something far more valuable than a marriage that no longer respected me. I walked out with my dignity, my reputation, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing the truth never has to shout to be heard.